to your weekly corner Späti. It is Kieran, and I'm here with Rob.
Hi.
We've got like a really full house. Yulia and Nick are away doing force femming the Spanish king. We'll talk about that later on a different episode. But today we're talking about real important shit. We're talking with members of the Gorillas Workers Collective, and we're going to get into some real stuff. So I'm going to hand it over to Rob to take it off because we're sharing microphones because there's too many people here.
Thank you, Kieran. Yes, it's a very professional setup today. At long last, we have the darlings of the Berlin left here in studio with us.
Come on.
There's oh, get used to it.
Please.
You should see how I talk to Diego in private.
Oh no.
There's a lot to get to today. I want our riders, our 4 guests, members of the Gorillas Workers Collective, to introduce themselves. I guess you can all do it yourself. So, I don't know, starting from the left.
But I'm on the right.
Stage left.
I'm Anna. I'm a rider, and I just work around the corner in Friedrichshain.
I'm Diego. I'm also a rider, although I haven't been to the warehouse in a very long time. I can get into the details of that later on.
I'm Joseph. I'm also a rider, and I did a shift recently, and it was okay.
My name is Camilo. I'm also a writer. Very similar story to this Diego guy here.
We've talked about gorillas a couple times in passing on the podcast, but a proper episode getting into the whole saga, I think, is long overdue for us because we've been keeping tabs, like probably many of our listeners, on the developments. But also, I think for how do I say, our listenership or the Berlin left is. I think we need to really break down the ins and outs of what all this means, what's going on, and you all can say it better than we can. So that's the idea today. I want to say at the jump, I have 2 goals or kind of topics. I'm going to say them at the front because we're going to keep weaving back and forth. There's just so many people. The first is, I'm sure many of our listeners, whether they're in Berlin, they're in Germany, they're in Europe, they're somewhere else, they are interested in maybe unionizing. Maybe they just think, my job sucks. Oh, I didn't really think that I could do it here. But so whether that's just the ins and outs of the Betriebsrat law in Germany, whether that's like unionization in general, talking to your coworkers, any stories about that, any tips, I mean, just going through everything that's happened, I think would be useful for people. And the other is, as I alluded to before, we're in the presence of true, real-life proletarians that many of us have only read about.
Is it very obvious that as lowly podcasters, we're going to be incredibly insecure this episode about what we do is worthwhile? Is it? Please tell us what we do is valid.
It is.
Well, insecurity is at least a sign of some sort of humility. And there's a lot of orgs and activists and people out there who want to do good things, but they don't know how. And they're very excited about gorillas. And so I want to give at least these 4 members of the Workers Collective the chance to hash it all out. What does it mean to be an overnight sensation? What does it mean for the future of the left? What is the best way to organize your workplace? How do we all fix all this mess? All right. I would like to begin
well put.
at the very beginning, which is, how did this start? So I don't know who has the best origin story. I heard that it was someone got fired for posting on a food sharing Facebook page.
No.
Okay, yeah. So please.
That's part of it. But
clarify.
it was before, and I think we got an old schooler with us here. So
An OG.
an OG, yes.
I mean, you are too. But
I mean, he's also one. So
yeah, actually, very true. When did it all start? I would say more or less in February. You know, I mean, before that, there was already some people who, at least in the warehouse that I used to work at, they were talking about, getting organized. It's like, why don't we have this kind of stuff? How do we do it? So there was some kind of discontent that was growing because, working conditions at that time were not good. Also, they're not good now. But anyways, February was really, really cold. There was a snowstorm that probably everybody remembers. And that was the moment in which it became very obvious that we couldn't really work on the conditions that the company was asking us to, because the bikes were not prepared for, the icy roads. So it was actually very dangerous. And if I remember well, spontaneously, some people from 2 warehouses, maybe, Schöneberg and Bergman Keats, decided to go on strike. And for me, that was like the igniting moment, because after that, there was some attention from the media and whatever, but also like we knew, or the people who were interested, that there were other people who were interested on organizing. So then we started reaching out to each other, and then we had a first meeting online. I think you were there, Joseph, weren't you?
No, I attended the first meeting in that freezing cold room. It's absolutely disgusting. Sorry, I don't know how to eat the mic. Yeah, I don't know about the online meeting, but we had the meeting in the really cold room. We were just like shivering in our coats. There was no heating. Everyone was like, every like few minutes, someone would walk to one of the heaters in the room and try and like make it work, and it just was not working. And we were all kind of confused but excited at the same time. Yeah, that was interesting. But I think you were putting it better than I can.
Well, the thing is that, that was kind of like the first in-person meeting. And one of the first things that we talked about was about the possibility of creating a Betriebsrat. That was, of course, not the only thing we wanted to do, but we learned about the possibility of doing that because that's something that's not really possible in many other countries. I come from Chile originally. Unionizing is really frowned upon. So it's like, I didn't know you could actually do this kind of stuff and you could get the company to pay you for doing this kind of stuff. So it was like, well, that's just nice. But at that time, we thought we are just a group of maybe 10, 15 people. We're not representing workers, really. So even if we try to do this, chances are that we're not going to succeed. So at that time, the discussion was that we were thinking of trying to grow our base of support. And we started, brainstorming some strategies about, how to get people to know about the fact that there were some organized workers at that time. So we thought at that time, let's do the Workers' Council later. But then the event that you were pointing out happened, in which the company tried to fire one of the people that were organizing because they were quite loud on social media. I don't know if I can say this. I mean, they are part of this Free Your Stuff Berlin group that has a lot of people in it. So of course, yeah, right. So they had a lot of traction, basically, and probably that's why this person was targeted by management as one of the people that they needed to get rid of. Basically, they fucked up the process, as everything they do, because this company is fucking
incompetent,
useless.
Thank you. Yeah, stupid.
Move fast and break stuff. Startups, baby.
Yeah, so basically they fucked up the process. We managed to identify it so we could rope this person back into the company. But then after that provocation, we were like, okay, now we're going to do Betriebsrat then. And then that's what kind of officially kickstarted the process.
I want to put a pin in there real quick because I realized not everyone is following, for example, the Gorillas Workers Collective Twitter account. Some people don't even know what Gorillas is. So as I understand the job is there are a bunch of mini warehouses around the city. There are pickers and riders. Pickers, so like you pull up your app, and I guess it's similar to Lieferando, Deliveroo in some way. In the sense that, you want something, you go on your app, you order it, and someone brings it to you, but it's more household items, groceries, and so there's people in these little warehouses who have to, as I'm told, like sprint sometimes to like get around, and because it's the big guarantee is it's in 10 minutes, right? That's still like everywhere?
Yep.
10 minutes or less guaranteed?
It's a delivery supermarket. That's pretty much what it is. And I think that's what like separates it or differentiates it from Lieferando and Foodpanda and Uber Eats and Deliveroo and all these other horrendous companies that they only deliver prepared food, and what we prepare are like Lebensmittel or like like household articles, food, etc. This kind of shit. And yeah, as you were pointing out, like warehouses are organized like that. There's someone who does the delivery. There's someone who like packs the order, and there's someone who. So those are like riders and pickers, and there's people who do inventory checks, and then those are basically like the three base workers for the company. And then there's like lower management present in all the warehouses. So riders have. Above them, a position called rider ops or rider captain or rider champion, which is the cringiest variation of them all. The cringiest variation of them all.
Silicon Valley bullshit.
Yes. And I don't think they pull that kind of stuff with the pickers. There's like no picker champion or this kind of shit. I think their like immediate superior is someone is well like just supervisor or yeah. And above them all is the warehouse manager. And then come like the big management shots. So like the city managers, I think the city is divided into like two areas, at least here. And there's like one manager for each one. And then there's one dude above. And then there's like nationwide manager. And then there's like one of the chiefs. I don't remember who, probably like chief people operations, one of those bullshit. It's not called human resources anymore. It's called like people's operations. And anyways, that's kind of like a quick rundown of what the company structure looks like.
The only thing that I will say to just kind of do this in an international picture is that this type of app, I mean, calling it an app kind of like obscures basically everyone in this room besides me and Rob and what they're doing. But like this kind of company, for let's say, or this kind of product or service, however you want to call it, is popping up pretty much all over the world in major cities, rival companies, largely due to the cheapness of property that happened during the pandemic, allowed people to think, because a lot of people I know who use Gorillas or have used it in the past thought you guys were actually going into Ravas, Lidls, whatever, and picking this stuff up. And this is something that started with, it actually technically started with apps like Lieferando and Volt, where these things called dark restaurants appeared, where these restaurants don't actually have a commercial face. They only exist on these apps. And Gorillas and like Flink and Yeser and all these other companies took that concept a step further and is like, the shop technically does exist. It's just you're not allowed in it. The general public, the workers are, presumably.
Yes. Just one quick note to that. I think the first one of like the big ones that exist now is Getir, and it was created like 6 years ago, and it started operating first only in Turkey, where it was created, and then got moved, I don't know, to other countries, and it only started here like half a year ago, I would say, and like the CEO of the company in which we work for basically copied the idea. It's the exact same thing. So it's a bit like pre-pandemic, but COVID basically like gave it the final push for it to be like brought over here.
Getir, yeah, that's the one. That's Istanbul based, and they kind of like proved the concept, I guess. And they are Turkey's most successful like startup in terms of just like funding accrued. So, I mean, that's story as old as time. Like, there's a million Deliveroos, Volts, and Lieferandos. Like, none of these ideas are necessarily new.
But there's only one Gorillas, and Gorillas, I'm told, is a unicorn, which means that. So when did it actually start? What, like 2019,
June 2020.
Wait. Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah, just over a year
last
ago.
year.
Yeah.
And then it reaches like some billion plus valuation and some.
I mean, what does that even mean?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. So that brings me back to the riders, which is like a massive expansion in the workforce, a number of riders hired. And so what effect did that have in, like, I don't know, facilitating like a kind of workers collective? Like, was that a positive? Was that neutral? Coincidence?
I maybe think negative, actually, to be honest. But when you have a massive... Oh, sorry, eating the mic again. When you... Well, from kind of my perception of when you have a massive influx of new employees, I think people are kind of coaxed into thinking that the company is great. You know, it's providing for them. It's giving them the waste food. Like, they can drink coffee on the shift. They, you know, meet lots of nice people. They have a good time. You know, the company's cool. And I think people kind of get lulled into that a little bit and don't realize about how they're being exploited or they're not being paid properly. And I think it only is with some time that you kind of realize or experience these cracks within the company. And so I think it's actually pretty negative from like a kind of trying to organize people and collecting people to have a massive influx of new riders and new staff, I think.
Yeah, I think that I agree with that, definitely. But I think there's also maybe a complementary effect to that, that I feel it's favored maybe the movement, and maybe not the organization itself, but maybe the you know, the traction that the movement has had. You know, this whole thing about the unicorn and whatever, because it made Gorilla such a, you know, interesting company for people to talk about, and then it just happened to also have a, you know, grassroots movement growing inside of it at the same speed as they were growing. So it was like, you know, I think I just have the feeling that I don't know, when we had the General Assembly for the election of the Electoral Council, there was like so media presence and all of that kind of like, it gave at least some kind of sense of power or of influence that we could exercise over, you know, the company somehow, at least fucking up their image in front of their customers. So I think that the effect is variegated. I mean, it has like, it's positive and negative at the same time somehow.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think it's been positive on the outside or externally and negative inwards.
Have you guys seen when Gorilla's ads on Twitter forget to lock the comments? Because when they don't lock the comments, they started locking the comments after a while, but every so often they forget to, and it's just abuse from people being like, pay your fucking workers.
Yeah, I've seen a couple, yeah.
I think we'll circle back to that.
Just about because I think the fact that the company became so big, in a way, it worsened the conditions of workers, definitely. Because you were talking before about, you know, it's an app, but it's not an app, but it is an app, and that is a big part of the problem, because as it happens with most of the platform workers, we're working for an app, so we don't get to really talk with the people who are responsible for, you know, the stuff that we're going through. There's all these low management people, but they don't really have the answers. So as the company became bigger, the feeling of being alienated was growing too. And I think that, in a way, has provided maybe a little bit of a force of pushing people into realizing that the company is not that nice after all. But, I mean, I'm speaking for myself. I became very angry that the bigger the company grew, I was like, I fucking hate this.
Well, so you were there at one of these early meetings. What about the rest of you? Like, how did you, or maybe if you don't want to talk about yourself, someone you know, like, how did they join the collective or get pissed off?
I mean, I know that both of you started in 2020, and you at the beginning of this year, no? And I joined, I think it was like after the third or fourth meeting that you already had, and I don't really remember, but I'd been like working at the warehouse for basically a week, and I don't know, I guess I either said something or made a joke or just said something like fuck this or whatever, just anything, and a colleague of mine told me like, we're having a meeting next week, would you like to join? And you were there.
I was there.
You were not there.
I was there.
I'm sorry, but
I was not there.
You were not there.
In
No.
SO36.
That was the third one I went to.
Ah, really? I
Yes.
thought, what an enigmatic figure this man is.
Yeah, like the first time I'm seeing him, he's doing a really poor job at taking notes and moderating at the same time.
Well, I couldn't see the notes you were taking.
Well, yeah. No, it was just like someone who I just like really recently met invited me over to a meeting, and I went there, and honestly, my first impression of that, and then the second meeting was like, this is kind of dumb. we're like this is bound to like die anytime soon, because the first meeting I went to, it was like 5 of us, and the second one was online, and it was 3 of us. Me being, the new dude.
Good trend.
And so after that one, I thought like, well, what? And
but then the third meeting, there was lots of us, right?
then the third one was the one where we met, and that was right after our colleague from Romania was
Almost terminated.
almost fired. Yes. So that's kind of how I got into it, and after that meeting, I did feel like, okay, this might. It may work out, it may be something.
Was that just because of the number of people, or was there a different energy, or what?
Both. Yeah.
I guess it also is a reaction to like an actual real, it's all real, but something very
it was
concrete that just happened.
Indeed. Yes, it was like, this happened. There is a really like obvious, concrete, thing that we can do about it. So let's do it, and let's follow the plan, and let's put our energy into it. And that's kind of what happened for the following weeks after that. And how about you?
I joined in May, and I just kind of weird. I remember just seeing a message on one of the WhatsApp groups. So mainly how we kind of communicate between riders is through various like WhatsApp or Telegram groups. And someone posted something or other, and it was from Workers Collective. I just remember reading it and being like, who are these people?
That's what we wanted.
What's going on? Like, okay. I just sent a message and said, like, can I meet with you? I want to know what you're doing. And then the beautiful and lovely Diego came to
the
my
enigmatic
place.
Diego.
The enigmatic, yeah, exactly.
No.
And we just met, and he told me pretty much about what everyone was doing, and how the process they were kind of planning and preparing for the Betriebsrat, and whether I might be interested in joining. And then it kind of spiraled from there, I would say.
So spiraled sounds bad.
Fair enough.
Spiraled up.
Spiraled upwards. Yeah.
Spiraled upwards.
To be clarified.
A very impressive jet maneuver in the sky. It looked really cool.
Yeah.
So how many people were there at that point?
So the third meeting, the one that kind of changed it for me, it was probably like 15 of us. And then that number kind of stayed for a month, perhaps a bit less, every once in a while. But that was kind of like the usual number, or the usual quantity of people. After that, we started meeting at at the Riegerstrasse. It was quite nice. They allowed us to use the space, and we continued doing that for like 3 months. Yeah.
And then, so when did stop me if I'm jumping too far ahead, but I think I knew about it from you, what was going on at Gorillas, but I think it really blew up in the media and everything with the strike at Charlie after someone was fired. I don't remember the exact date, but what was it like? Take us up to there.
No, I think you are skipping a little bit because of the strike. I just noticed your hand is covered in ink. What happened?
It was one of your pens, so you got to be careful.
Wait, what?
Yeah, whoever has the blue pen is.
I don't have a blue pen. Is this yours? Enigmatic pen you have.
It's an enigmatic pen indeed.
Probably came from Gorillas.
Yeah, before the strikes, we had the General Assembly in which we were elected as members of the Wahlvorstand.
Yeah, Wahlvorstand indeed.
Election committee.
Okay,
And,
so I got it all mixed up.
Yeah, don't worry. People get really confused. Even people who are sort of involved with us kind of get confused about this sequence of events. So don't worry.
It's very confusing.
But they were. I mean, one happened right before the other one.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, but I think really the whole thing with the strikes became so big, very much because we, on the one hand, had forged this very good infrastructure of organization that led us to the assembly. So we were really well organized. So we were super fresh. And also there was all of this hype, in the media and everything, and in the company, and also we won. So we were like, fuck this, we can eat the company. So I think all of that, pushed the strikes to the point they got to. And then that was definitely, I think, a landmark because that increased our followers in the Twitter account from, I don't know, 1,000 to 10,000. So it was like, whoa, like very big audience we have right now. But yeah, that was after the assembly. Maybe I don't know if there's anything to say before the assembly, but yeah, probably there is. Yeah,
I would say that's the week in which a lot of people got dizzy because of the because of the increase in followers on a Twitter account. I would say some people lost their ground. That's how I like to put it.
I want to come back to that. But
yes.
With the assembly and the elections, this is, so as I understand it, this is in the Betriebsrat process, the reaction from management was to argue or try to force these higher level office or management workers into this assembly to vote on it. And that was, I mean, you were successful in
keeping them out.
Yes. So
Yeah,
explain that, because that seems like a go-to tactic of any company who would face something like this.
Yeah, I mean, so someone with the title Special Operations Manager tried to get into the assembly.
Already a red flag.
It doesn't.
more than just a red flag, yeah.
Does that sound like a conflict of interest to you? It does to me.
There's just one quick thing. Or go ahead.
No. I was probably going to say something libelous. It's fine.
Yeah, me too. I was worried.
No, I mean, if just to mention like a quick technicality for anyone interested in doing this or like reproducing the process in their own workplace, that the only people who can attend this type of event or occasion are employees, and employees are defined by law as someone who cannot fire or hire. And there's like, I mean, that's like the basic thing, but there's more clauses that specify. So anyone who has like a specific responsibility within a company is not an employee. So a lot of people who had specific responsibilities within the company were not allowed in the assembly because that's what the fucking law says.
But they were very indignant. The indignation was hot.
I seem to recall. I remember there being buses. They were trying to send people to like a counter party. This ringing a bell?
I think there were kind of people congregating or management congregating outside, trying to arguably intimidate people from going in, and kind of coercing them to take beers in the park because it was a super beautiful hot day as well.
We call that a tactical rave in the biz. You got a precision park strike. Yeah,
coercing them into drinking beers. Yes,
it was a very beautiful day. But to be honest, the best part of my day was when I told a member of the management that the conversation was over and that they weren't allowed in, and just. No, conversation over because they were trying to argue with me. It was fantastic.
Yeah, it was a sweet moment. I had a similar one. No, what I wanted to say was also, I mean, even though, it is true that the law is very clear on that, also in order to make that decision, we, as the organizers, would need to know what every person does in the company, which is information that was not really provided to us. The company was really bad at giving us information we needed to know who actually gets to go in. They gave super like they sent the fucking employee list like the night before and the midnight before. And it was like, how are we supposed to process all this data? And then they blame us for just being cautious, because we already had the precedent of them trying to fire somebody for organizing. So of course we didn't want to create an unsafe space for our colleagues to go there, and then what if they get fired, So we were not going to do that, and we maybe took the risk of excluding some people. But for the most part, most low-level management people who kind of understood what we were doing, they were like, okay, yeah, fine, I cannot go in. It was only, the fucking people high up the ladder. Yeah, those.
Special operations CEO, office manager.
Yeah.
Yeah. I started my startup, and now I get into all the best clubs in the city. Mm-hmm. You will not keep me from my treats.
But also remember that, anyone can get terminated for anything within the first 6 months of them working at the company.
Yeah. Propensite.
Great. Yeah, great.
Yeah. So the only rule is there are no rules. German employment law.
And so basically what was super important at this General Assembly is to exclude those people that may have identified those workers for speaking out, raising their voices, or identifying themselves as problem workers from getting fired. So it was a desperate means to protect other workers.
I mean, 75% of us were in our probation period. And it's also worth saying that Gorillas has a 6 months probation period. That's the legal maximum that you're allowed in Germany.
Yeah.
That's not the Gorillas lawyer once told us that was the law in Germany. He was being
Fishy.
as slimy as usual. I don't want to be libelous and say my true feelings about him, but he was being slimy in that moment. Luckily, someone pipes up and said, no, sorry, that's the legal maximum that you're allowed. So
Yeah.
there's really no excuse for that, in my opinion.
That's kind of normal in Germany for something that's like full-time, like unlimited contract kind of stuff. Yeah.
For something that provides that. I was just going to say that,
Yeah.
But it's worth clarifying. I know we're going to get into that later, but you were all hired on 12-month contracts, or
Well, except for
now I'm limited.
our colleague here who just won a court case.
Yeah. But normally only 12 months.
But that's the insanity of it, of just
Exactly.
like 12 months where like for half of that there are no rules.
Exactly. And also it gets even worse because there's a sizable portion of the workforce who are people who are on working holiday visas, who, due to the treaties that the countries have with each other, they can only work with the same employer for 6 months, which means that for their entire duration of their contract, they're always preferred. Always, you know.
And it's evidently something that the company knew all along. So
Of course.
that's
Yeah, of course.
But I mean, it benefits them in so many ways because, they have a completely a workforce that they can just disperse of and just terminate at the drop of a hat. And, we even had someone quite sizable from management say quite openly in a meeting that they couldn't provide unlimited contracts because it would cause too many problems with the investors. The investors don't want that.
No. You will never be allowed to talk to them either. This is the black box that says things. But like that's kind of this interesting moment, or it has been since the Hartz IV reforms of just like post-war Germany was built on this idea of like you'll get a job down at like the dentures factory and you'll be employed for life, and that will be enough for like a German-made car and a house in some sort of like commuter town or Dorf or whatever. But like that as like how we're going to run this economy is so ripe for abuse when it's like, and here's gig working, because
it ain't regulated.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, coming from a country there, 3 months is the normal kind of like probationary period. 6 months did seem steep, but again, it's just like once you're in the door with kind of like full-time company man employment, like it makes up for that. But that's not a good system for when you're like...
When you're there for a year.
Yeah.
Or
like,
6 months.
And when you're there for a year... Or at least that's what they're telling you, when really a lot of people in management are probably like, yeah, but maybe less, though. We always retain the right.
But it also makes sense to have some sort of probation period when you have some kind of training structure or kind of assessment or something where it's skilled work. But guess what? On your first day of work at Gorillas, there ain't no training. You're out on the bike. You're doing the job that the exact same kind of quality of job that someone who's been working there for a year has been doing. On your first day, there is no training. There's nothing. So
because that's like, again, for the kind of like company man jobs of Germany that, again, this like whole system was designed for. There would be assessment, there would be training, there would be a meeting at the end of 6 months if you're still there, being like, and here's the permanent contract, blah blah blah, welcome to Volkswagen or whatever. But like, that's just it being abused. Like, it reminds me, just not to derail entirely, but like to inflate Ireland's unemployment numbers back in the like 2008 crisis, or like make them look better, we had this like jobs bridge program, which was like you can still collect the dole unemployment benefit, but you will get like a training job, and then all the training jobs were like waitress, and like it was not like professional, no chance of advancement. Like literally employers were on record as saying, well, I was going to put up a regular job ad, but then I just took advantage of this kind of like loophole. Like they'll always do this.
This is the future, isn't it, really? Unless we're very careful. Like the idea of, there's a lot of people in the UK who unfortunately now are in the cabinet, who talk about it's the worst phrase, that flexible workforce. It makes me feel sick thinking about it. I mean, they inflate, like you say, the employment numbers by these means as well. It's especially fucking Dominic Raab.
When you hear the term flexible workforce, they imagine that more like we want to contort your body into weird spaces.
Yeah, that's a really good
things
way
you
to
wouldn't
put it.
otherwise do. Yeah.
Was there anything else on the elections you wanted to share? Because I want to go back to like before, or maybe on the eve of the the moment you made it as a workers collective.
You
like,
would make it.
as the like on the eve of that. Excuse me if this is too, or if
it's
this
a little
is
cheesy.
if this is too pointed, but like it seems mostly self-selected. Is that a fair assessment of like you all were like, oh, I'm motivated to participate in something political like this. But, please,
What is the alternative?
like how much was it spreading within the company? I don't know. It's. I didn't phrase the question very well.
I think there was a concern that we were going to lose that election, but we showed up and there wasn't really any rivals. So in that sense, yeah.
What do you mean rivals?
I mean, the other people in the company knew there was a general assembly occurring, but the company or the company-friendly people didn't bother to form an organization like ours. So, yeah, we won by a sort of default landslide, I guess.
But wait, so did you mean something also related to maybe how much of the workforce you're actually representing? Or like
Yeah. So, like, are there many people maybe on like a wait and see? Let's see if these people are actually going to do something. I really want to join, but I'm scared to, or I don't care, or they're really annoying. I hate them.
You mean like
within the workforce
in general,
like
right
across
now,
among the
or
riders?
back in
No,
June?
back then on the eve of.
back?
I mean, we
then.
can check in. Maybe it's hard to remember, but I want to check in before we get any further.
I mean, I think there was definitely an element of self-selection, like you said, and I think that has been a problem throughout the whole process, to be honest. Even though we've tried hard to reach a lot of workers for various reasons, which I'm sure we'll go into, like it has been difficult. But there was some workers that came forward, and it was so nice and so beautiful. They were people that we had never met before, had never had any kind of interaction with, and stood up in front of however many hundred people it was and said, I want to be involved in this process, and put me forward as a candidate. I want to do this. You know, I've experienced X, Y, and Z, and I'm fed up with this, and I want to change things. So that was like the pinnacle of the beautiful moments of how this process should work, and how, like, what happens when it does work, and when you reach people successfully and people have the confidence to come forward and say that they want to be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was wonderful. I guess, like, one of the problems with the, like you say, the self-selection thing is that for a lot of people, this job is just kind of a waiting room. Like, especially during the pandemic, there was people who would normally do all sorts of other jobs working as riders. Like people with like master's degrees and stuff. Like, you know, they normally in other times they would be doing different things, but temporarily they were doing this kind of thing. And yeah, it's difficult to get people to care about the long term of this job, even though there's like thousands of people working in this company. The turnover rate is just quite high because of that waiting room kind of bias. Like, yeah.
But also to add to that, it's also maybe my own experience. I think the fact of getting involved with such an organization and getting, involved with trying to change your work conditions, it's something that has provided maybe a motivation to still stay in the company. I personally, and I think that's the case of most people in the collective, wasn't planning on staying for Gorillas for that long. But then I was like, well, at least maybe I can exercise some kind of influence here. So I will do it. Why not? So maybe, it does have to do also with how politically motivated you are before, because I think also whatever is happening in the collective or whatever we're doing with it, yes, we're advocating for, better working conditions, but we're not just workers, we're also, it's a very diverse pool of people, and we have very diverse claims too, and the way I see the collective is as a space that we can create to also advance those other claims, we just happen to be all writers, but we're not just that.
What about active hostility? Because not to
Where?
like I was again as a as a buyer, I don't know their names, but going to some of the strikes, there were some fights going on between it seems like, for example, one dynamic was workers collective called a strike, and many of them don't work at one warehouse, and the people at the warehouse are like, get out of the way, I'm mad at you, I'm annoyed.
If I may, that did happen in some occasions. Perhaps not to like a gigantic extent or in like a really like aggressive way, but I do remember it happening the second, and also at least I heard an anecdote of it happening the third day of the second wave of the strike, so the ones that took place in the second week of June. The second day it took place in Prenzlauer Berg. I did see someone like pushing some other people. Someone who was inside the warehouse wanted to work. We were blocking it, standing outside, and this person just went like, "Wah!" and and yeah, we all responded like, "Yo, what the fuck are you doing? Like, chill the fuck down." But that was like a really like minor case of it, or like a small instance of it happening. And how to say it? So, to like go back to your question or to your comment. The first day, so the Wednesday of that week, the second week of June, it wasn't the collective who organized the strike or what set off the spark or whatever. It was the workers themselves or our colleagues, our co-workers from the Checkpoint Charlie warehouse who did it, and then word spread. And I was chilling at a park at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, saw a message like, "Yo, Checkpoint Charlie's on fire" or something. I was like, "Ah, shit." And so I like ran.
Fire emoji.
Yeah, so I like, yeah, and then I went like this, like horn hand emoji or whatever the fuck this is called. Gnarly. And yeah, I just went over there, and we all kind of like supported something that was already happening and that was self-organized. And the following days, it was rather the other thing that you mentioned. It was rather the collective going to a specific place and calling the strike or organizing the strike or then doing the blockade or etc. That was also like a saucy issue or like a controversial issue within the collective of like, should it be us doing the strike? Should it be more like promoting worker self-organization? Should it be which one of these two? And how to solve it? Can they be the same thing? All this.
Do you have anything on the dynamic? Yeah, I mean, I imagine that's just ongoing since then, in the months since.
I think also, just to kind of build on what you were saying, I think that there was a big split within the collective on different opinions. But I think it's healthy also to have different opinions. But also I think it's interesting, or it's important to note on maybe why there was hostility from workers about these strikes, and kind of trying to understand their hesitation or hostility towards that. I think there's a myriad of reasons why people didn't feel, or some people didn't feel like striking was the answer, like maybe out of fear of losing their job, or feeling like, because we have workers it's super international, and if you haven't had experience or kind of familiar with the kind of concept of striking or standing up against your employer, or kind of like an authority figure, I think people weren't particularly comfortable with that. Or sort of coming back to the original point of having new workers as well, and feeling like they actually like the company as well, and that you're being obstructive in their working day. You're getting in the way of them doing a good job, and that's what they want to do, and they enjoy working for the company. So I think, yeah, we were split about the strikes, but I think it's important to understand and to kind of empathise with those workers that didn't feel like the strikes represented them. And I think that there's so many factors in why that they didn't feel like the strikes represented them, or that's what they wanted.
I think it's important to say also, you asked about hostility, like the vast majority of the hostility has come from the management, who are terrified of giving up even a little bit of their power to the workers beneath them.
Of the power that they so incompetently hold.
Yeah.
Good now.
But I think it's worth pointing out that like a great deal of a lot of how this city is changing, and a lot of other German cities is changing, does kind of... there are definitely people who will take advantage of or at least make the assumption that immigrants will not know what the local rules are. Like from my own personal experience, I definitely did get ripped off with my apartment because he speaks English, he doesn't know that we're overcharging him, and then we're probably. Where are you from, Ireland? yeah, this is actually $3,000 a month. Oh, that's a deal. But that's. But then, they were definitely very surprised to get the letter from the tenants union. But that does happen, and even relatively well-meaning Germans kind of do think that oh, you don't speak German or you're not German, you will not know the
what
rules.
a fucking Betriebsrat is.
Exactly, yeah. I really do think we should probably specify though. But workers' council, that's what you have translate. Okay,
but
cool.
also sorry to interrupt you, but even the perception of the necessity of such a thing, because a lot of people, myself included, come from countries where the minimum wage is 5 times. Not 5 times, a fifth of what it is here. So it's okay, you're working for very shitty job, the minimum wage, but still I'm making the same money that an engineer would make in a nice job in Chile. So it's a lot of people are well, I'm not gonna complain about it, and I feel fighting that is it's quite difficult. It just becomes easier, I guess, whenever the precarious conditions become very obvious, and that's usually when people's physical integrity is compromised.
Yeah, I mean, but that's always the kind of function of immigrants within capitalist societies of just I did get ripped off with my apartment, but it was still a lot better than anything I could have gotten in Ireland. And that is the reason I moved to the city, is I couldn't afford anywhere back home. But there is this level of no, you'll be grateful with what you get. You will not get as good enough as the native Germans or whatever, but you should be grateful for this, because you're right, that is, but that's still kind of they're kind of hoping you will take that kind of quasi middle position of not being the same as your German coworkers.
But I think you're right, that people maybe start to question it when you were saying that they're kind of, what were you saying, your physical kind of integrity,
absolutely,
kind of gets challenged, and that does happen, especially with the full-time riders or the full-time workers in the warehouses. I can list off people that have had hernias, they've had slip discs in their back, they're in intensive care because they've fallen off the bike, broken bones, constant disfigurements, because of this job, or psychological impact as well. And I think maybe that's where the kind of penny drops, and they're thinking, actually, do you know what? Shit, this isn't worth it for €10.50 an hour, actually. And maybe this isn't the best job in the world anymore.
Yeah, when those things happen, and also when people don't get paid. That's also the tipping point.
That's a big one.
If anyone wants a good laugh, but also a depressing read, there is a Gorillas Workers meme account on Instagram.
Is it still there?
Crisis management?
I think
Gorillas Rider Life.
It might be gone.
Oh, Gorillas Riders Life. Yeah, they got all their accounts taken down one by one, but now they've all been reinstated, I believe.
But now they've decided to leave the meme phase in the past.
Yes. Yeah, the difficult second album.
Sadly, yes. Yes.
Their Sgt. Pepper's moment.
So what is their thing now? What is their thing now?
Well, I think now they become some sort of cultural matrix for for the writer community of Berlin.
I love that club.
Well, it now is a falafel restaurant, so I'm sorry to inform you.
But I did know there's some journalists that I follow and pay attention, and they were actually just becoming aware of how shitty the situation was, because there was just a meme of just acting like you got paid when you didn't, and shit like that, and it was oh, that's kind of funny, but also really sad and fucked up.
Someone had retweeted a tweet from someone, was it someone in management or someone anyway from the company, saying that you couldn't even lol, sorry, you can't even buy a falafel with this month's wage, because some riders, or I should say just general workers, were paid pittance,
9 cents.
Yeah, under €1.
Person.
Yeah.
And this is the thing, and you're right, it is about and I'm sure we've mentioned before, you come to work to be paid. And the thing is, when
radical new idea. When crazy lefties at it again.
It's been happening for a while now. Yes, sorry.
And kind of when that basic contractual agreement is not met, I think you start to kind of be a bit peeved and kind of,
Yeah, I mean, in the past, I've been quite lucky among Gorilla's workers in that I've normally been paid all right, but this month I got fucked over, and it's taken up a lot of my emotional bandwidth at the moment, thinking about how pissed off I am that I'm coming to the end of my money already, and it's early in the month. Yeah, it sucks ass.
Sorry.
It sucks ass, I mean it.
In the bad way.
But actually, by the way, sorry, I think that's why many times at the end of the month, like payday, is kind of like a good time for us to recruit new people, because that's when everybody's freshly angry.
Right.
You know, every fucking month I've been working in this company for more than a year, and at the beginning they got away with it with like, oh, we're a startup, you know, you guys cut us some slack.
We're
Come
fucking
on.
up.
We're a family, you guys.
Whoops.
And it's like, okay, fine. First month, second month, come on, like you've been doing this like systematically, and
Where's the
Fuck
money,
you,
Lebowski?
I fucking love when these companies say we're a family. I love being fired by my dad. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
We mentioned the strike, as you said, Diego, that popped off at Charlie and a few subsequent strikes, and the meteoric rise of the workers' collective in, I think, maybe the like Berlin left, even the German left, maybe beyond. You became like important figures, if not like for any influence you wield, you know, across politics, but just as like a sign. I think a lot of people, you know, when they're reading the news, they want to, you know, they want some good stories. They want to be like, oh, okay, there's like something good going on, something to believe in, and that's that exists, I think, you know, kind of mediated online. People love, commenting negative, like yelling at gorillas or giving them 1-star reviews on Google. That's also in person. I know a lot of orgs have reached out to you in groups, and, you know, they just want to help. Or how do they help? I know this is like a huge topic, and it basically is like, okay, what is the future of this workers' collective, or what role does it have beyond specifically making sure people get paid on time? You know, there's safety for riders and pickers and everything. I don't know if you want to start somewhere, or I can just throw something out. But like, what is the role? Like, how does it feel to be in this
you
position?
can go first. I think we have very different opinions about what the role is.
I was going to ask if the concrete question was, what is the future of this thing that we're doing? Or that's one of the concrete questions.
That's one of them.
Okay.
You want to start there?
No.
Okay. Then pick a different one. How does it feel to be a meme? I can put it that way.
Shit. I mean, we've only been meme-fied by by Gorilla's Rider Life, as far as I know, and they did a pretty good. And they did a pretty good job.
Depends what you mean by meme, because meme in the original sense that Richard Dawkins meant, like a cultural
sign that's being like regurgitated over and over.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that
we already
mutates over time
went through that, I
culturally.
think.
In that sense, it's pretty exciting to be a meme, no?
Love to be how do you say that? Damn it!
Don't. No, it's fine. It's like, it's so weird that that's Richard Dawkins' legacy.
It is.
Yeah. Don't read anything else he's done. It's bad.
I disagree with that. The Selfish Gene is a difficult but wonderful book.
Interesting. Yeah, well, I will have a conversation afterwards about.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's not relevant.
It's super interesting. I just wanted to add that, like, I have my little bit of experience was working with like the IWW in the UK before they became IWGB. And one of the things they were trying to do was Deliveroo riders and stuff. And it was amazing back in, like, this would have been 2015, how no one in the public was really open to the idea of that kind of workforce being unionized or, like, organized in any way. Because, like, I think one thing that, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but, like, this is also happening kind of in this moment of, like, a bit of tech backlash. Of just like, we're not really in that, like, 2015 was definitely the tail end of it, of just like tech will save us, tech's the future, it's all shiny, there's a new app every so often, it's all kind of cutesy and fun, before we all kind of like, I do think there was a bit of a panic over like, was that Oxford something 2016 in the Cambridge Analytica, that was it. But it was still like a sign of something like much more horrid. I think the coup in Myanmar is probably a better example of Facebook being evil. But like that sheen off tech companies has gone, because it's very interesting. You guys have mentioned that like people are now aware that management of gorillas are not good. But I think from my perspective as someone who's like kind of clued into tech in this country, there was no opinion of them being good. They were just like, that's the management of gorillas too. The management of gorillas is kind of shit. Like there was no like positive moment. They weren't idolized the same way like tech leaders were maybe before, even a couple of years ago. And I'm just kind of curious if you feel like that's played a part in maybe how well you've been received.
I mean, I'm under the impression that the CEO did try to like create a positive image of himself.
They all try,
but it failed.
Yeah.
It really backfired.
Too much macho energy in there. It's not the times for that.
Be the flame, be the ghost.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we can talk about the weird pickup artistry letter that he released.
Yeah, let's talk about the corporate psychosis at some point in this podcast.
But yeah, like I think every tech leader is still trying to live like it was 2012, 2013 or whatever, when they were all very happy to do their TEDx speech and stuff. And but like it's super interesting how quickly that's fallen. Like I have more followers on Twitter than he does. Like that's like unheard of. Like that shouldn't happen. But yeah.
But also remember that he doesn't actually have that much power or that much control over the company anyway, because it's how much percent is he in control of?
Less than 20%. If from the last thing I heard.
Oh, interesting.
This person, who will remain unnamed, owns less than 20% of the company that he created or co-created. And I think, I don't know, like what type of ownership is used by the company now, but at least the majority of it is now owned by the big investors, most of which, as far as I'm concerned and as far as I've known, are Chinese.
Yeah,
Tencent.
I think Delivery Hero though is
Yes.
involved in that, which is a German. I mean, it's also I think similar owners to than Lieferando, but I'm not really sure.
The other secret motivation of startups that startup leaders will never tell you, the real goal is to be bought by a competitor.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. I mean, that's what it looks like, really.
Are the investors the same for the competitors as well? For example, for Flink, Getir,
Might be.
They're shared ones. Some months ago, I did some research on that, but I have unfortunately forgotten all the names. But I realized that there was one that was shared, but it wasn't like a major one. I think the major ones for gorillas are, I don't want to fuck up the names, Atlantic Foods, something like this. That was like the first big one. And then Tencent from China.
Sure.
And now Delivery Hero, who also owns, if I'm not mistaken, Lieferando and also Foodpanda. And also owns other delivery companies that operate only in China and whose names I do not know.
Probably can't pronounce.
but that have, like 2 million riders hired, this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And
A small company in China.
Huh? Yeah, indeed. And yeah, that they've also been partly responsible for there's been like a gigantic case over there, or like gigantic, I don't know how big, at least it has resonated somewhat over here, of like a rider who was also organizing riders over there, like apart from the official and unique channels of worker or like state approved worker organization. And he was
what a phrase.
he was imprisoned and is now disappeared. No one knows where he's.
Oh, fun.
Yep.
But that's for anyone who pays attention to like tech and stuff like that, or startups, because they should separate the two. That's not surprising. It's vying for monopoly. It's hedging their bets. Yeah.
The rider universe.
Yes. The extended rider universe.
I heard a rumor that our dear leader, the CEO, was there was an investor who wanted to invest, but only on the condition that he was out because he's so toxic. which sounds beautiful to me because I fucking hate the guy.
Be the ghost.
But we really...
You couldn't fire a ghost, couldn't you?
Can't
How
strangle
about fire?
True. But then, it sounds good, but then we're just going to replace one kind of grey sludge with another kind of grey sludge.
For sure. Did you watch a Squid Game in your view? It's just like because of the VIPs. For me, it's like the best cartoon for the investors. Like this really ridiculous, bunch of people. Anyways, I just wanted to share the reference.
Absolutely, and like again, speaking of just like weird, over financialized tech startup stuff, like that's a common demand of like the investors in any company Elon Musk has headed up. But like you can look into anyone that's replaced Elon Musk in the companies he's been replaced in, and they're not like good guys.
Maybe a little less toxic on social media, but
probably more dangerous though.
But not less toxic in like the work email, probably.
I wanted to come back to your question about what the future is. I don't have the answer for it. But maybe just want to share some perspectives on it, because I would really like to hear also what you people have to say about it, because I think one of the beauties, at least in my opinion, of the collective that we're part of is that we all have very different kind of different objectives on our political organizing. Like what unites us, as I said before, is that we're writers, we're workers, we want to improve working conditions, but also it's not just that, And for me, what I'm trying to do with this is to be part of a group and to contribute to a group that can help maybe radicalize people, get people more politicized into a whole host of different topics too, because it provides a space for discussion and for empowerment of people. And I'm kind of hoping, because I don't really think Gorillas is going to exist anymore in the next 2 or 3 years, but I think that whatever drive we created with this movement will still exist. And for me, that's really what I'm trying to do with all of this, beyond the very specific, things that we want to achieve, like the Betriebsrat and whatever. It's like giving people really the feeling that we can change our material conditions if we act together, because we actually can, especially in a country like Germany, where there are luckily a little bit more laws for us that can protect us and can pay us for doing this, actually. So, yeah.
I agree a lot, actually. I mean, I don't know if you had the impression that I was going to disagree. I felt that for a second, but
I wanted you to disagree.
Yeah, and say what?
I don't know.
Sorry, we need
Fuck you,
to
Camilo.
just for the podcast, just for content, we need to take that again. Can you call him a bitch and throw a glass? We can give you a martini to throw in his face.
I won't.
Say you're here to win, not make friends.
To be fair, though, I think as a cross section of the collective, I think we're probably closer together in that question than the general collective. I think this we should be a sort of microcosm of what we want to produce in greater society, and the real revolution is the friends you make along the way. I really believe in that. And I love all of you.
Diego is touching Joseph's shoulder for this.
You gotta do it for the homies.
I agree with you. But no.
That sounded difficult. It was like you were struggling a little bit to say that.
No, I do agree with you, but I think because I feel like your goal is a clear kind of political one, and I kind of come maybe from a background or like my previous experiences. This is my first ever kind of political awakening or whatever, and I kind of came from it very much, and it's going to maybe sound a bit like cringe, but maybe from a place of more kind of feeling and connecting with people and feeling
it's not cringe at all.
No, or maybe
it's great.
And yeah, and kind of feeling don't know, yeah, seeing my colleagues and my friends having a bad time and wanting that not to be the case. And so I kind of don't think I have that much of a political drive. And so maybe when you're talking about becoming what was the phrase that you used, the left darlings, sweethearts, yeah. And so I kind of feel more kind of estranged or alienated from that, because that's not really my interests or where I'm sort of was originally interested in, although I have been kind of catapulted into this kind of environment of politics, which is really interesting, and I'm super grateful of what it's offered me in terms of my own personal education. But yeah, so I think in terms of our goals, that's where we differ slightly, in that I'm not so politically orientated in kind of building a kind of a drive or like a momentum or whatever. Like that's not really where it kind of resonates with me. And this is kind of what I find really difficult in this process, is that because we have been spiraled into this kind of tornado of these kinds of issues, and like being adopted by these particular groups, and being maybe objectified or whatever the word is. Mythologized, yeah.
Used
Quite basically, exactly.
And would you want to elaborate on that, Diego?
We will. In just a second.
And then I think we've lost the roots of actually connecting with people in our workers. And I think this is a really big problem. Like, in all of this kind of debate and discussion and whatever that's been going on in terms of like politics and movement, and we've become estranged from where we began and why, from improving things and connecting with people and helping others. And that comes from connection and like kind of basically like love. Who can follow?
Well, I mean, both of your projects are both motivated primarily by love. It's just that you, coming from a non-political, apolitical background, that you don't project it into the bigger space. I think that's the main difference, I guess.
Just want to add a little thing, because I think it's definitely that, like, but because I want more love to be in, and that's why I think we need to become more radicalized, because we need to stop othering others, and I think creating spaces like this, it's for me, it's also my first political involvement actively. I mean, I was politically minded before, but I was just talking about it, but now it's like I can actually, have some kind of influence. And then I guess, we have been roped into this thing, and then it's like, whoa, actually, maybe we can weave networks, that can have some kind of impact. But I don't know. I mean, at the same time, I do feel sometimes that we are in this big kind of mythologized, scene. But then I think, what did we actually achieve so far? I don't really know if we have achieved anything.
I think there is at least one mildly significant achievement, which is having, well, of course, like forming the collective and all the relationships that have like been created through that. That has that is definitely something. But more in like the public sphere, or in the things that go beyond us. I can't speak fucking German at all or anything, but I have paid some sort of attention to what's being discussed, thanks to or because of what we've been doing, or have been trying to do, and at least I think there is some sort of like mild, small public debate happening on striking and on what the strikes are supposed to be, what they're not supposed to be, how they're supposed to happen, etc. All this shit. And related to that, like the utility or the uselessness of unions and of political groups in that. So I think there is something. I mean, this kind of like sparked some sort of discussion in the left scene, left milieu, etc. on strikes, on what are workers able to do or not able to do, how they should be able, or how we should be able to do it, and how all those things are supposed to happen in the context of like the pre-existing institutions. If these actions are supposed to happen in the framework created by these institutions, or should they go beyond, or etc. I think that's something that we've like kind of contributed to. I don't want to say that we created the whole discussion around it, but I think we like brought it to light again. At least it was something that I didn't, it wasn't like in my radar like 3 years ago when I arrived and in the following months. So it's a minor thing. It's a minor achievement, but I would say it's something. And if it contributes to changing what the proletariat is able to do without getting, jail time in the near future, I think I would consider that an achievement. A small one, but yeah.
Maybe one way to see it is that the Workers' Collective has two Everyone wants to spread love. That's what I got.
Not everyone, my
Not
friend.
everyone.
Shouldn't make.
I know
make
a couple of
assumptions.
people.
I was also about to say, like, it's too late for love.
We are the love delegation here, but like,
This is the love delegation.
There's maybe
yeah.
two. What's the right now? There's two buttons you can press, or two not paths to go down because I think they're on the same path, but two moves you have, which is that that the collective represents workers at this company, and it advocates for more workers' power, worker autonomy, worker self-control, a decent, being paid on time, all the basics. And on the other hand, the workers' collective also has a political role in the sense that it can reach people, in the sense that it inspires people, in the sense that people want to work with you to do something.
Stuff.
And so is there a contradiction between those two? Can you only pick one or the other? How do they feed each other or not? That's the question, it seems like to me.
Many hands being raised here.
I don't think they contradict each other. I don't think they should either. I mean, I think the collective, well, it's a collective and as such is plural and very diverse, and that means that we can have many fronts of action. And one of them is, doing the Betriebsrat and whatever, all of this more technical stuff that we want to achieve. And that is one arm of whatever we're doing. But at the same time, as you said, the collective is also a political group. And as such, we have been, received invitations to take part in certain, conferences or forums and things like that. And me personally, and I think this also comes down to whatever the intentions of each person in the collective is, but for me that is a very good opportunity to also create these connections that I was talking about before. I mean, recently, last week I was invited to go to, not me, I went to Brussels.
You personally.
In representation of the collective with another comrade to meet with a bunch of other organizers from around the world in the platform sector. And that was the whole point, was to go and talk to the European Commissioner to push Europe to make more laws or better laws to actually give employment status for writers, which we already have. So for me, that wasn't a big gain on that perspective, but the big gain was to meet this whole bunch of people who are doing the same thing that we're doing, and they have been doing it for so long, and there's so much to learn from that. And I was so surprised also to hear that they were so inspired by what we were doing. And I was like, what? I don't even know what we're doing, but it's good that you're inspired, and they're also making their strikes and doing a lot of things. So for me, that's also a good thing out of all of this, actually. It's an achievement, actually.
Yeah, I would say so. And I like what you were saying there about the achievements. And for me, if there's two things that I would like to achieve out of this, well, the Workers' Council is one, certainly, so maybe three things. The other two would be the striking rights, as you mentioned, the fact that these precedents were set by a fucking Nazi judge in the 50s. That's unacceptable, and we should challenge that. And the other one is the fact that the unions in this country are completely asleep. And our experiences with unions, I don't want to upset any political secretaries who might be listening at this moment. But we have, it's been an enormous drain on our time and resources for a few months now, and they don't, for them, I feel like it's a contradiction for them to help self-organized workers, because to help self-organized workers would negate their own position, because they want to organize the workers. I'm using inverted commas there. They've said that to us, they want to organize us. We want to organize ourselves with their help. But for them to help us would be to negate their own position. So,
and again, it comes back to that kind of the media dominance and the kind of the being adopted by the left as well, being instrumentalized. I think our experience is that we feel like we have also been instrumentalized by some said unions as well, which is really surprising, because you expect that they would be on your side and have your back and help you. But we found it extremely draining and difficult process, actually.
It's unfortunately the double-edged sword of what you were talking about, of just there's more laws here in Germany that you can actually take advantage of, but Germany since the end of World War II kind of had built a society where unions have a role, and therefore they're kind of become institutionalized, and it's worth pointing out that some of the most radical union action we've seen in the last 5-10 years have come from countries that like had unions completely like destroyed, where there was no role in the society for them, rather than like the German, Nordic, even Italian tactic of like unions have a role, but they like become institutionalized. They become agents of the status quo to an extent.
Well, the role here is quite obvious. It's to domesticate the struggles of the proletariat. That, I mean, not to like overstate it or anything, but it's that's what it is, you know. And I think it was just like quite evident in this case. We're doing something on our own, and as Joseph just pointed out a minute ago, they immediately like came and were like, "We want to organize you," and that's I don't think that's what it would be like. I don't know. It wasn't what I was expecting from them. But then again, what was I expecting from them? Not much. Nothing.
So what organizations, if any, aren't, what's the word you use, domesticating the proletariat?
I think, or you wanted to go ahead?
No,
Or-
go, please go.
I would draw a difference between like domesticating or wanting to domesticate, which is the goal of a really big union. I mean, I'm going to go ahead and name it just Verdi. Bam, 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 bam. Yeah. The FAU hasn't done that with us, and they've been like way more like considerate and supportive, I would say, and like way more understanding. Like, okay, they want to do their own shit. You know, we're just gonna help how they want us to help them, which is something that Verdi hasn't done. And they're more like, we're gonna help you in the only way that we know how to help workers, which is by basically ripping their will off from them. So, or trying to at least. So those are two unions that we've been in touch with. NGG at the beginning, yes, but it was also, I think, more on like a personal level. It was rather someone from NGG who was helping us out, and not so much like NGG as the union NGG. And then there's like some pieces of the mosaic of the local left scene that have also been interested in what we've been doing. Clase en Clase, which is, I don't know exactly like how this works, but a lot of the people who partake in Clase en Clase also form part of a political organization called RIO, like Revolutionary Internationalist Organization, I believe, which is like an adherent. Well, you both know this way better than I do.
We were there.
Because you both are Trotskyists.
We're not. We're not.
But yeah, they most of them form part of this organization, which at the same time, or I don't know how to express this in English, but they also form part of one of the many fourth internationals that exist now. I don't know how many they exist now.
I thought that was the one.
There's only
They
one.
sold it as the one.
Well, every Trotskyist organization will sell its own fourth international as the only one.
The Fourth International was the most important one.
I
no
beg
one
to differ.
cares about the ones that came after.
But the first three, you mean? Or
I should also clarify at that moment, after contradicting you on the international question, that I'm not a Trotskyist. I think I'm an anarchist.
I mean, I guess they are. I like to think of them as allies, as any other group organized in the left that is not, I guess, discriminating. And of course there are many discussions that we have on the way of getting to that kind of alliance. But I think Trotskyism works in some ways, but it's also problematic in other ones.
Well,
you
use the word ally, and I think that's the crux of the issue, whether it's a union or a party or a group of people online. Everyone wants to be an ally to the cause. So what can allies do?
But also, why do they want to be our ally and not an ally for other struggles as well? Is another question, like quite a valid question. There is a lot of other struggles, like I'm not comparatively or anything, but it hasn't got as much media attention. Why us?
I can say one quick thing. If someone out there who's listening wants to help out, the precarious worker in this city, fucking do something for like helping workers. They receive no fucking attention whatsoever. They're like thoroughly like I don't want to say like disorganized, but I mean they perform work on like a solo basis. They never meet. I did helping work for like half a year, 8 months, something of the sorts, and I never met any other person who did it. So it's a job that is like really, in which it's really hard to organize, to like form like a political base or group or etc. I don't know if there's one that exists right now. I don't think so. So if you want to do something for, again, the precarious worker in the city, try to do something for them, like reach out to them, write them, I don't know, create some fucking stickers, post them on the S-Bahn saying like, hey, you work for Helpling, reach out to us. I don't know, something of the sorts. That would be way more helpful, I believe, right now than trying to do something with us or for us or etc.
To add to that, just as a general principle, I think when you want to help someone, you just have to ask, what do you need? And I think that's something that some organizations feel like doing because they assume they know what we need. And that's a very paternalistic and patriarchal way of doing things. And that's what FAO didn't do, I feel. I mean, of course, every organization has their own agenda. I mean, I wouldn't expect them not to, but there are different ways to approach you with it, So yeah, I think it's just like if they really want to, support us, write us and ask us like, how can they help? And then we can tell them. And I think that principle really works with just in all situations anyways.
We didn't answer the question of why do they want to help gorillas? Like, why are they coming to gorillas rather than something else that's happening that might be more worthwhile?
That's a question for us.
No, sorry, that was a question Anna posed.
Yeah.
While I was peeing.
Possibly. But like it's, I mean, cynically, I would say that, like we said, you're the darlings of the left. You've popped off. You've grabbed a lot of attention in a way that other movements haven't, which is unfortunate for them, not necessarily yourselves. But like, that's the only really thing I can think of. I mean, I'm going to say if I was like Verdi, or Vendi is a like different thing, but like FAO or these groups that are maybe more trying to be like voices of the left, or like like what you could call like socialist clearinghouses of just like everyone come in here kind of thing, are given the opportunity will reach out to everyone they think is doing something good. The yellow unions are maybe a bit more, like you said, paternalistic, and will kind of come in and be like, here's how you do shit. Yeah, I mean, that's the only thing I can really think of with that kind of perspective.
I mean, the reason I asked the question, and now I'm just talking about myself, but I mean, a lot of being, for many people, being a leftist is not just media consumption, but also being on the right team. And so they see a new player to root for, and you're going to be very good for our team. And I'm just like, ready to cheer for that, get very excited about it. And it's more like, I mean, that's fundamentally, apolitical. I think it's not fostering new possibilities. And I mean, but the only antidote is, you probably work somewhere that needs that could be better organized. It's like, you should be the Gorillas Workers Collective you want to see, or whatever it is.
Like, I don't know, I just had a thought, but correct me if I'm kind of wrong in my thinking, but there's something in this that we've become like a very big talking point within a certain kind of like milieu or group of individuals who tend to be a kind of very left, arguably maybe middle class. But that also seems to be kind of the segment of the society or whatever here that is also the ones that are kind of ordering, and they're kind of the exact same group of people, the ones that are well informed and kind of, really into our struggle tend to be kind of from the same place of the people, the customers of who we're ordering from. Just like a kind of a thought, and I don't know if anyone has any.
I have some unrefined thoughts on that. One is that I don't know if there is an overlap between like the customers and the people who talk about the collective or like support it symbolically or on the internet. I don't know if that's the case. Even if it was, or even if it were, I wouldn't blame anything on the consumers. I don't think that this is an issue of the consumers being assholes. Like, everyone is to a certain extent like consumes from these like fucking horrible companies, from Amazon or from Gorillas or from Getir or from Flink, even the workers ourselves. I mean, I don't do it, but I know of a lot of people who do it. You
Everyone's being fucked over somewhere in the supply chain.
Yes, yeah. It's I don't think that like focusing the problem on the consumers will take us anywhere. Because of course, like my clothes, or all the clothes that were done in this room were made by like kids in Bangladesh. It's again like not an issue of like focusing on like who consumes and then who consumes what, and then noticing this like discrepancy between that and then supporting the collective. Quick thing, I think that I've heard this from some people that have like reached out to us. The collective like somehow embodied something that people were like expecting or they wanted to see for like a long time. This thing of like, oh, like we haven't seen like a workers movement or like wildcat strikes in so long in the city. I like heard that from at least like 5 different people while we were doing it. And like my first reaction was like, fuck off, man, I'm not doing it, or like no one here is doing it to like please you or like your expectations of what the workers are supposed to do. We're doing it because it's like the thing that we can do, the like the mechanism that we have at hand. It's a tool. But I did get the impression that a lot of people had this like expectation or this like dream or fantasy or projection of like, workers, precarious, they're supposed to behave in this way and do these things. And it hasn't happened here for 40 years, and now it is happening, so that's why I like them. And I fucking hate that. It really displeases me. I think it's like an attitude that it can be seen in some of the political groups that have like reached out to us, and I really don't like it. It's like borderline fetishistic or fetishizing or whatever the word is.
Sure.
Of like the working class, angry workers, they're supposed to behave in this way, and why aren't they doing the fucking revolution? Like alienated. And now that they like that they or we or whoever like steps out of that line, everyone's like, yes, they're behaving exactly how we want them to behave. They're doing something, and they're like becoming historical subjects or whatever the fuck. And as I said before, I really don't like that. It gives me a weird feling. I don't know where I wanted to go with this rant.
I would say kind of like 100% agree. Like I said earlier, there was this. I'm going to admit that I'm probably one of those people because like I was helping a little bit with IWW in the UK with delivery workers. But like I think a lot of the people who, as you said, like this kind of group who maybe would be in the like have the means to maybe order from Gorillas are possibly the same people who've been thinking for a very long time, this is inevitable for this kind of work. There is going to be a strike at some point from one of these companies, and when it actually happens, they're like, "Fuck, let's go." The other side, I mean, the stupid simplistic answer I have for like the customer is also being the same person who's supporting you is like, I'm getting served the ads. Like I heard about Gorillas around the same time that you guys like went on strike and started like organizing, and like when Charlie happened, I was just like, but I got that ad being like, that seems too much. Like I literally saw that app and I was like, that just seems too far for any of these kind of companies. Like this is too much now. Because like I guess it's the same people who like grew up in the world, or not grew up, but like is aware of like, Uber, HelloFresh, all these other kind of companies that are exploitive in much the same way. But then this one comes along and it's just like, okay, this has to be a breaking point. This is too far. Like,
but then coming back to sort of the consumer and the kind of part they have to play in this, like I agree with what you were saying, Diego, about that it isn't necessarily the customer or the consumer that is to kind of blame, because there's many other factors in this. I mean, there's an element of choice and responsibility, but obviously it's super convenient, it's quite cheap, it's great. I think there are many cases where it is totally legit to use like a food delivery service. Of course, like you have children, you have a broken leg, you have COVID and you are in isolation, all of these things, which I think is absolutely legitimate. But coming back, like, what was I going to say? Like, to saying that the consumer kind of isn't really, the consumer isn't, yes, there is some responsibility and element of choice, but also maybe it also comes down to their kind of financial means, like, we were having this discussion the other night that's saying that okay, so we choose to fly or we choose to buy cheap clothes or we choose to fly with cheap companies and choose to buy cheap clothes. And maybe the kind of problem isn't so much with the consumer, it's to do with the bigger general problems, like maybe their wage or whatever isn't so much. And so I think it's kind of maybe a general problem with society and not necessarily down to that one individual so much.
The thing that I
just wanted to add one little thing to that. I mean, I also agree that we cannot be blaming the consumer. I mean, that's neoliberalism, right? You're putting the blame on the individual all the time. But I'm just thinking about maybe this dissonance, and I don't know if this happens between the people who support us and the people then who order and who don't give a shit about the writer. Because for me personally, when I was writing a lot, what really bothered me was not that people were ordering, but it was just this kind of like sense of indifference from the customers that they didn't treat you as a person, you know, and like
that there's respect.
It's just like saying hello or thank you, you know. So
did you ever have the experience where you were giving the bag to the customer and you try and start a conversation, and as you're giving the bag to them, the moment their hand touches the bag, they say goodbye?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's horrible.
It's tough. So I would expect from our supporters, at least if they order, to give a hello, give a good tip, and like give some kind of like, you know, like extend the humanity to the worker.
On the ground
you know,
floor of the Alpo, maybe. Yeah.
That's super nice when that happens. Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting, the list of things that you're talking about, of like the acceptable or like the genuine reasons you would have for using gorillas rather than going to the shop yourself. And I 100% agree. As the reason that the most tempted I was by gorillas was just like being a new dad and like
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot of work for me personally, but like, and it's really interesting to compare and contrast that with like the people in the room who are from the UK who maybe remembered when like Tesco home delivery started, because that was their angle. It was like for pensioners who maybe can't walk to the shop anymore, can't drive anymore, and it's like very specifically notable that that's not what gorillas are trying to do.
Not at
like,
all.
Speaking about like consumer angle on this, like no, they have a marketing team that has decided what this company is for. And maybe there was also business decisions, like management decisions in that, but they're not targeting the infirmed, the elderly, the busy. Like they're just
it's hip, it's fresh, it's young.
Yeah, exactly. Look at this monochromatic design. Don't you like Bergheim?
I think the consumer identity is a pitiful one indeed, that we're all forced to have to some degree, or we're all forced to consume to some degree, but then the identity you're kind of is also maybe foisted upon you, and again by the aforementioned advertising. And I think the sometimes, in my opinion, the political antidote to that is okay, but then you support the right things in the right way, so everything's fine. And that doesn't actually abolish the consumer identity. It's just a palliative on top of it, rather than okay, but what if we could create, I have to consume things, but my political identity is something through, I don't know, my work or whatever it might be, which seems to be the fundamental crux, at least that I see. But now we're getting away from the role of the workers' collective. I want to give you all the last word. Is there any final thoughts?
Okay.
Any worker out there who's scared of getting fired for organizing? Or
they should get in touch with us.
Yeah, definitely.
We're fucking busy because we didn't mention we're being sued right now. But if anyone's thinking of setting up a workers' council, then they should get in touch with us. Maybe give it a few weeks before we can really help, because we've got a lot of court cases and elections coming up. But
we can help you out. We can definitely give you a really detailed account of what to do, how to do it, what steps to follow. What not to do.
Oh, anything off the top for what not to do? Like,
I don't know. It might get litigious.
Okay.
I don't want to get into that.
Reach out. What is the best way to reach out?
You can write to our email.
We have a Twitter also that 13.8k people are already aware of, but there's always room for more.
Jesus. I don't think there's room for more. I think should have stopped a long time ago.
We'll keep throbbing.
Please. No, the other email account that you can write is gorillasworkers@zohomail.com. Twitter, Instagram, And yeah, if you specify somewhere in the email that you're interested in like getting to know something of like worker self-organization or building a Betriebsrat, we will definitely prioritize that answer and get back to you quickly.
Right. Well, if there's nothing else, I just want to thank you all for coming and talking to us and validating our existence as a left voice. You all heard it here first. We're legitimate. But seriously, thank you very much, and good luck in the future. Jesus.
Yeah, thanks.
No,
I would
thank
say
you.
keep it up. There's a reason everyone's excited, even if they're a drain sometimes.
Yeah.
You're doing something right.
Yeah, shit. I didn't mean to be ungrateful a little while ago with my fucking rant. I then thought about that. I was like, shit. This sounds really fucking grumpy. But no, like, yeah, I think I can speak for at least not just myself in saying that we're all really grateful and yeah, and receiving like your support, the support of other people, just of random. Just fucking like people walking down the streets, like checking out the strike and be like, yeah, keep on doing it, keep on fighting the good fight. And that always feels really nice. Be it that kind of support or just groups reaching out or organizations or just people who want to know like how to support or donations or etc. All of that has been amazing. So a big thank you to all of you.
And with that, we will catch you guys on the bonus feed. Ciao, ciao.